Debbie Turney Digel and her father, Dick Turney, are here. Debbie Digel grew up in Cleveland, and she went to Denison before transferring to Penn State, and there she received her undergraduate degree and her MBA. She and her husband, she was married at the Hall of Philosophy, as were her two sisters at Chautauqua, and she and her husband, Marty, live in Bradford, Pennsylvania. They're the parents of 3 children. Debbie's the glue, her dad says, to an organized, a group he organized called Friends of Sailing that's informal, but she helps keep it together. And Dick Turney, originally from Iowa, is a graduate of Harvard Law School. Dick and he's a retired, he says, recovering attorney, and he and his wife Jean recently relocated from Sanibel, Florida to Prendergast Point. They are here today because Dick assembled a team to make a program in his son's honor that conforms to the national standards of sailing, and it meets the terms of safety and effective learning. Chautauqua Lake is an outstanding place, an outstanding natural resource, and my guests have helped make many more people aware of this. So welcome.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Some years ago, I asked E.J. Dion, who was on the grounds, why he hadn't been bringing his family to the grounds to see Chautauqua, and he said, I think it's a bit too earnest. And that exchange has always stuck with me because I understood he hadn't tasted the spirit of fun that exists at Chautauqua. When I look at the two of you and I think of your family, I think of fun people, most especially of the person who's not with us, John. So let's start with how did you get to Chautauqua, Dick, and a little background there.
Well, thank you, Nancy, for having us here, because I would take any opportunity to talk about sailing on Chautauqua Lake. We were living in Cleveland. I was practicing law, and we decided we needed to find a summer home, someplace to go on weekends, and particularly someplace on the water. So we went up to northern Michigan a couple of times, and then we decided that was too far to go. So someone said, why don't you go to Chautauqua? And I said, where's that? So they told me. We came up here first time in a Starcraft camping trailer on a 4th of July weekend, and of course it rained every day. So we just loved the place. And then we started to look for a cottage, and we did find a cottage after about a year. And we came up here, and our son John was 16 at the time. And he immediately became a counselor over at the Boys and Girls Club at that time. And the other children went to the Boys and Girls Club. So we spent our summers, from then on, every summer was here. The children all went to Boys and Girls Club. They all became counselors, okay? And now my grandchildren have done the same thing, and they've all gone through that. So we found Chautauqua, and the idea was to get into boating and so on. But the primary thing was that our son really wanted to sail. And we started out renting boats and getting some boats to sail. And finally he was good enough that he would get out there with his Lightning. His 2 sisters were the crew. And they spent a lot of time going to regattas. I think we got 1 son-in-law from the sailing and 1 son-in-law from being at Chautauqua. So it all worked out pretty well.
It did work out well, and we're here today talking about a program that didn't exist until there was tragedy that came into your lives. Would you address that?
Yes, John became ill, and then we lost him early in the year of 1999. I immediately called Tom Becker, a very good friend of mine at that point. And I said, Tom, we're going to do something. We're not sure what we're going to do as a family, but we're going to do something. And it's probably going to have something to do with sailing. So immediately, we got involved with setting up a sailing task force that went to work immediately. Mm-hmm. And there were There were 7 or 8 persons on this task force. They were all contemporaries of John's.
Men and women.
Well, yeah, you were on it, and Katie DeVille, and yeah, there were men and women, all sailors, and they worked diligently all summer, and they produced a magnificent report that we're still using today because they outlined the type of program that would be the ideal based on U.S. sailing parameters. Now, Jack Volker was the recreation director at that time, and Jack was very cooperative and very, very helpful. So we started out with a report, and then we bought some boats. We looked around and tried to find sailing directors. That was hard to do, but eventually, after a couple, 3 years, we did get John Orr, and then eventually Gary Snyder, and now Kirk Kelly, and all of these gentlemen have added things to this program. So we started out with the report. We started out buying boats, not knowing what we were going to do with them even. Jack Volker at one point said, well, we don't need those 420s. Well, we did need them. And we first built the little storage building down there.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of
No,
that.
we built the little storage building. We thought, oh, this is very large. We'll build it. Again, the institution was very cooperative in terms of providing the access to the water, okay? As Debbie's husband has said many times, you can put a golf course anywhere, you can put tennis courts anywhere, but if you're going to have a sailing program, you need to be on the water. And Chautauqua was very, very open about helping us with the location of where we put the program.
I'm fascinated by that location. I mean, you are down there with something that's not quite as fascinating.
We tried to hide the sewer plant.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of waterfront there, and we took some docks out that were privately owned, and we put a dock in so those people could have access to the water. But we have a large waterfront down there, and we had to bulkhead part of the shore, which was quite expensive. And so we went along that way, and then finally
bulkhead, you mean put in like a cement
seawall.
we had to put a seawall in.
Seawall.
Because there was erosion going on. And that was
And
expensive.
the old dump used to be down in that
Oh, yeah.
It took quite a bit of cleanup to make that space.
This was a dump area.
Right.
And when we would dig in and find it, you'd find debris down there, you know. But anyway, this went on. We built a storage building. They worked out of the storage building with the program. And then 2004 or 5, we said, let's get the building going. Let's get a building. And we worked with an architect. We did a lot of things. And then finally, I went to Marty Coyle, because there was the Coyle Pavilion down there, which had a nice foundation and a roof, but no sidewalls or anything. And the architect drew the building, which we've now put there. So we took the Coyle Pavilion and we made it into the sailing center with Marty's permission.
Hence the shape of the building. It's
Yeah.
quite
Started
unique.
out as a-
Started out as that pavilion,
And
exactly.
they built it with that unique shape, so that was the...
And we have the classrooms there, of course, and everything that we need.
And sailing on the grounds was decentralized. You had it going on at Boys and Girls Club and other places. What were you going to do to make that something that was more central?
Well, sailing at that point, I would say, was really, for the young people, was part of Boys and Girls Club. Dave Beeson was the person that worked with the young people in the sailing program. There was a sports club that did some sailing, and Dave Beeson had his little group where actually John and his friends, Debbie's brother-in-law, Jeff, others had gone through that program. But that's what there was. There wasn't any more. So when the sailing program got set up, it was set up separate and apart from the Boys and Girls Club, working together but separate, with its own director. And getting the equipment together, and then finally we got the building designed and built, and we opened the building in 2006.
What were the goals that U.S. Sailing set for you that you wanted to achieve? You went from the task force, and then you went to, was it the committee then? And now you have this advisory board, but you're constantly looking for ways to improve. I mean, what were the things that you wanted to achieve, say, like with your instructors?
Well, we wanted U.S. Sailing type approved classes and courses, because they have approved lessons, plans, and so on. So we tried to follow their lead. For example, this is the first I learned of it, when we started out, we would take an 8-year-old child, put them in an opti on Monday. By Friday afternoon, they were sailing the boat by themselves. So these were things that U.S. Sailing, this was their program. The other thing that was very big with U.S. Sailing and big with me is safety. U.S. Sailing absolutely required level 1 instructors, that is certified, just like a lifeguard is certified. Okay? Initially, we had a lot of difficulty hiring the level 1 certified instructors. Now, I'm happy to say that we are 100% level 1 instructors, and in fact, Chautauqua hosted U.S. Sailing this spring. The weekend just before week 1, we had the 4-day session where they took 4 people through the level 1 course. 8 of those persons were people that came to work for us. So
these jobs are in demand now, I think, from what I'm hearing, is that people who want to be achieving in sailing in that sport want to teach at Chautauqua.
Well, I think now our new director, Kirk Kelly, is very fortunate, because now with all these people having the level 1 training, he sort of has his pick, and he can pick people that he now knows who have the qualifications, but all of the applicants now have the qualifications, and to me that's extremely important.
So they were riding before, they were getting a boat ride before, and then it went to...
Well, no, that's a little, there was instruction, and actually a number of my grandchildren worked there and provided instruction. Debbie's son Jacob had to go to Erie, I believe, to get his level 1, but he got his credentials. And the lessons given, or the education or the training that these counselors received, enabled them to give the courses that they really needed to give. Now, what the sailing program also does is they give every student who comes into the Boys and Girls Club, they get boat rides during the week that they're there. They go out on a boat. And in some sense, that really provides people with an opportunity to sail, and if they want to pursue it further, they can come and take classes at the sailing program.
And there's a number that we'd like to talk about.
Go ahead.
The number of children that were sent through the program, sent through a boat ride or a lesson, and in 8 weeks, it was 2,900 young people were able to get on a sailboat, which is just a wonderful exposure net to what's going on.
Other sailing programs hear that number, they can't believe it.
How is that possible?
Well, because Boys and Girls Club has hundreds of students, and they turn over every week. So those hundreds come, and they go on a boat ride. So there might be, I can't give the exact number, there's several hundred students who take classes with the sailing program, but these other kids come over to Boys and Girls Club, and they get boat rides. So that gets the number up there.
And it's aesthetically beautiful, I have to say. When you're out on the water and you look in, it adds so much to the shoreline of that south end of the grounds. It's really attractive. I'm sure you're getting compliments.
Well, you know, and we're very fortunate. We have a lot of people around the area, like Tom Hubble. Tom was president of U.S. Sailing, and he's the gentleman who brought the Thistle Regatta to Mayville this spring. And bringing, 300 people or more into Mayville was a pretty big deal.
It was a huge display of the sport.
It was, and the boats are out there every day for almost 2 weeks, I think. It was unbelievable. And because having resources like people like Tom, okay, great.
So it's a public program. I've heard you say that this is not like a yacht club, even though I have to laugh a little bit about Debbie's award the other night for being, I guess you got the Tiara Award. Did you hear about that?
No, I did not.
I don't know how proud I am.
Oh, she got the Tiara Award from the racing community for being the woman who's contributed the most to racing at Chautauqua this year.
Oh, I think that's
So
wonderful.
it was a lot of fun and a lot of laughs, and it was sincere, I'm sure of that. But having said that, this public program is not like you have to join a yacht club. And how does it work? If I have a friend who says, I want to learn to sail.
Or the good thing is that access to the sailing center does not require a gate pass. So if a child is registered, somebody wants to come in and they live off the grounds, they can get through the gate without a gate pass, go right to the sailing center. Then they come back and pick up their child for lunch or whatever they want. They go in and out without having a gate pass. That's fairly unique, I think, to the sailing program. So any public members who want to take these courses, and we get some once in a while who want to come in.
What kind of boats do you have?
Well, we start with Opties, which are like little bathtubs, and now that's gone to what they call the open bick, which has an open back end, and the kids love those because they can tip them over, and they just have a lot of fun with them. They learn, that's the beginning boat, and they've got a number of sunfish.
Backing up a second, the Bic, as I understand it, is made by the Bic Pen Company, and that's what
That's
some.
correct,
yeah.
that's correct,
correct.
because
And
it's
they're-
all plastic.
And when you hit something, it flexes. So and they're cool because they're orange and they're mylar. and-
They're plastic instead of fiberglass.
yeah.
And they're just more Star Trek-y looking and not as much as a bathtub. So the young kids are really wanting to be out in those and be cool, and it's just, I think it's more fun.
It is.
It's more fun.
So the beginning program has sort of gone to the open bick. That's the
Okay.
new thing.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have sunfish and lasers. And now we have a fleet of 12 420s. And then to carry the groups of Boys and Girls Club, they have larger boats, Flying Scots, other larger boats where they can take 6, 8, 10 kids out with a couple of instructors.
What's the total number of the fleet right now? Do you remember?
Well, it was, when Kirk Kelly got there, it was like 130 or 40 boats. He has since reduced that number because some of them were not in good repair. And he's trying to bring the number down because we ran into a storage problem at the end of the year. But he's been very good about fixing boats up that need some repair and keeping the boats going.
So what happens in the off season? I wanted to ask you about that. Is it all planning? I mean, does your sailing director go away and then you come back in the spring, or does something happen in the background?
Well, I don't know that much about it. I know that normally the director goes to the U.S. sailing meeting, wherever that is, normally someplace in the south. And then they do planning, and they look at the course selection, decide if they would have changed the courses, you know. But it's right now it is a seasonal thing, and you know they start getting ready a couple of weeks before the season. They're folded up pretty much 2 weeks after the season. Just to follow up on that class that they gave for the level 1, U.S. Sailing is planning to come in next spring and do a level 2 program. They liked our venue a great deal. They really liked to be here, and I believe they'll probably fill that class also. And there's more racing type instruction, and so it's only a 2-day course, but they'll probably fill that class also. U.S. Sailing does a good job.
Historically, there have been some good sailors out of Chautauqua Lake. I mean, I know we all know of a couple of women who won the Women's National Enlightenings, Sherry Neville and Mary Bailey together, and
The Nevilles, and Jimmy Neville he went to the Worlds a number of times.
so we've had some accomplished sailors, which it has to be something that other people aspire to through the years.
It's a good sailing lake, and it really is, and so there's no question about that.
Can I just tag on to that? Some of the instructors that we get are now coming from like Hobart William Smith and some of the really, really hot sailing colleges.
Schools, and that's really
and
good
they're
too.
carrying our message back there, and that's really helping promote, you know, our region for being a sailing destination, and what a great place for a summer job.
But in a way, I mean, you have your master's in business, your brother had his master's in business. Is it a business, what you're doing? I mean, it's not just a little nonprofit, it takes some management.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it takes management. It takes managing the staff of 18 or 20 persons. You know, it's pretty. The staff starts out fairly large, and then as the season goes on, as people leave.
And school starts earlier in some places.
School starts and college starts, and the staff is diminished. But it's a
And the budgeting process is
budgeting.
It's subsidized. It's fair to say it's like all Chautauqua programs in its own way. You're a benefactor, and I'm sure you're always grateful when people contribute to the memorial for John R. Turney.
Yeah, there's no question the fact that, and I want to restate that Chautauqua has been very generous as we moved along here, and with buying equipment and doing the improvements on the property. We've worked very closely with Jack Volker and his successors, and now Meg Pickard is there as Recreation Director, and we're working with Kirk Kelly, who's former Commodore down at Lakewood, and Kirk knows the community. His real plus is he's a great sailor, and he also knows the community.
And this isn't just for kids. This is for adults. This is for anybody.
That's a good point. Let me comment on that. When we started out, my thinking was, let's have a program for children, okay? Let's get boats and get the kids started. Well, then we found out a couple of things. We found out some of these teenagers would come to Chautauqua, and what do we do? We're teenagers. What do we do? If we don't play golf, if we don't play tennis, what do we do? So we picked up a number of teenage classes, okay? And then the adult classes. When Debbie's daughter, Abigail, was teaching there, she was teaching the women's class, okay? And she was, all of 19 or 20 years old? She was teaching the women sailing, because we had a women's class, and, so it's now all ages.
So tack to today, what's going on? What's the next step? You've said that everybody can have a boat. It's smarts, it's experience, it's not always strength, but it can be some strength involved. Everybody can get into a boat, but in terms of access, what do you have going for today?
Well, I think I think we've accomplished a lot in the past 3 or 4 years in terms of working with the institution to get the fleet replaced, because we were sort of running out of, we were not replacing the boats as they were wearing out. We've done a good job of getting that done. We formed this ad hoc committee called Friends of Sailing, very informal. But we have a number of people on there very interested in helping out and coming up with ideas, okay? So we got the equipment problem solved, and then we worked on making sure that the instructors were qualified. And we did work on that, and again, we cooperated with the institution to the point where we could get that done. Now, all this does take money, and Chautauqua does subsidize this, as they subsidize most programs on the grounds.
And you said there was scholarship coming up, maybe.
That's in the process. We are thinking, and one of my ideas was, why can't we have some type of a scholarship program as a community outreach for Chautauqua? I just have to believe that there are junior high, senior high kids who would like to get out there on a boat. And it's not inexpensive. I mean, things in Chautauqua are not inexpensive. So my thought was to subsidize some type of a scholarship program, reaching out to the community and having young people tell us why they would like to participate, and then based on the amount of room that we have in various classes, start out with 1 or 2 a week or something. Just bring those kids in, have their tuition paid, and they would come and avail themselves of the program. I personally think that would be a great way to spread the word that Chautauqua is really a community interested organization. We're not just elitists sitting up on a hill somewhere. And the program is not in place yet. We're still working on it, but it's an idea that I would like to see.
And today you've put it out there.
Yeah.
I can't close this without saying congratulations. I understand is it your first great-grandchild and grandchild?
It'll be the second
great-grandchild for you, and your first grandchild. I can't believe
John's older son presented us with a great-granddaughter April 20th last year.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
Debbie's son is producing a son or daughter.
We don't know.
So sailors are in the pipeline. I want to close by quoting you, Dick. You said a while back, anybody who wants to learn to sail should learn to sail. We're moving this thing ahead. We're not going to sit still. We're going to make it better. So thank you. That's just what both of you have done. And I'm glad you've been.
I felt very strongly about that, and I've said that every time, that we can keep making this a little better all the time, and I think we can.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you,
for your
Nancy,
time.
Thank
very
you.
much.
And thank you for joining us.